what got you into delivery and leadership journey?
Actually, I was very interested in people, in, the business problems.
How you developed your people skills?
I'm a social animal, and I always have been.
That was the hardest question I've ever been asked, actually, on one of these podcasts. I'm going to cancel those questions next time. Hey, and welcome to the Change Leaders Playbook, giving you all things delivery leadership in a podcast. I'm Cliff, an experienced leader of change initiatives and advisor with a passion for the teams that are leading the way. I'm joined today by my incredible guest, Sathpal Singh, a software engineer turned senior leader and Agile advocate. Over the last 25 years, Sath has moved from a hands-on developer role into management and strategic leadership roles, working with a number of international clients and global brands. Now, Sath has a number of global voluntary roles as well, and is currently chair of the British Computer Society's Agile Methods Group and Organiser at Future of Work Scotland's meetup. He's also an international keynote speaker and a strong advocate of coaching, mentoring, and social leadership. I'm really looking forward to this conversation and happy to welcome Sath along. Sath, welcome to the show. How are you?
Great, Cliff. Great to be here. Thanks for the invitation. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, thank you. Likewise. So there's a lot we can cover. I think we can talk all day, but I just want to start with just covering you and what got you into the delivery and leadership journey that you're on at the moment.
Oh, that's a great place to start. So as you said, in your intro, and as I was listening to you, it sounded a little bit exhausting hearing it all. So yeah, as you said, I've got a technology background. That's kind of really where I started. I was a hands-on software guy for many years. Enterprise Java, I was a database administrator for a while. But what I think really, when I reflect on it, and I've talked about this before, I learned early on in my career that actually I was very interested in people, in, the business problems and the valuable role that technology was playing to solve business problems. So for me, it was never just about the tech. I wasn't one of these people who was like, oh, shiny, something new, and I wanted to play around with it. I was just never that sort of engineer. I don't know if you've seen the Social Network. I'm a film geek, so I tend to wee films and everything, but I was not one of these guys just plugged in, coding away. I was talking to people. I was away from my desk. And I think that naturally just led me more into a passion and focus on, what are we trying to do? Do we understand the problem? So, that sort of business analysis type kind of hat that some of us just naturally wear, engaging with stakeholders, working with the teams. I'm very passionate about creating great collaborative environments. And I kind of just went from there, really. And I think that naturally led me into Agile practices. But that was there from the beginning for me. I started as a software guy and did something called extreme programming, which some people, still use and still know, but that was before the Agile Manifesto was written. So my journey with this stuff, it's pretty much been there the whole of my, 20 plus years in the industry.
That's great. I haven't heard anyone talk about XP for a while, actually, extreme programming, but it's a good one. I unfortunately didn't have the pleasure of developing with it, but I know many people that did, and a lot to say. So, right, one of the things that struck me when I spoke to you very briefly a while back and looked at all your social profile was people aspect of things. You are a big advocate of people. So tell us about how you developed your people skills, because quite frankly, I know many people with engineering backgrounds, many of them are great people with people skills, and some probably it's less of a strength for them. But how did you start to develop that and found a passion for people and developing people skills?
That's a tough question. Well, you hit the nail on the head. I'm passionate about, working with people and people in general, and but I'm a social animal and always have been. So I'd probably say I'm sort of verging on what you might class as an uber extrovert. So I'm here, there, everywhere. I'm involved in a lot of things as you mentioned. But I think to me the development of people, I'd probably say I don't even really like term people skills. I think it's quite outdated now. So I'm a advocate of something called social leadership. So I've talked about that quite a lot on the global stage. And a lot of that inspiration came from a chap called Julian Stodd, who spoke many, many years ago at my meetup, Future Work Scotland, that you mentioned. So I've kind of followed a lot of his sort of work in sort of social practices and social theory, and the social age is where we are now. But I took a lot of that and started to apply it very practically in my work and leadership. And I think the big thing about all of that is it's less people skills, it's relationship skills. So I think at the heart of business in the workplace, those who tend to excel are those who are good at building meaningful, effective relationships, right? And they tend to be people who have what we call high social capital, right? And I think I know a lot of people, well, in my sphere, because I'm, friends with a lot of, other very active folk in industry, other thought leaders, or those who are, very influential in their own spheres. And I think that's the thing that comes through for me, right? They're great with people, they're good relationship builders, they make good, strong connections with people, and they're very good communicators. And I think for me, that's the journey a lot of us are on. And one of the things I've always focused on a lot, as well as my own self-awareness. So on continuing an ongoing fashion, and a very iterative fashion, I guess, as an agilist, is constantly, I guess, checking myself and understanding myself and looking at how I'm kind of evolving, because we all do, whether we realize it or not. I think most of us are so busy doing what we do, we don't tend to stop to take the time to do a self-retrospective, right? And I would kind of encourage that. So I don't know, what's your thoughts on that?
Wow. I think you're right. So I was going to delve a bit more into why and how having amazing social skills and social capital aspect of it is important in delivery. I wanted to get your take on it, but in answer to your question, I think that part of delivering, whether it's in Agile or any other means, and even in just leading teams and working with your stakeholders, a lot of it is doing great work, but a lot of it actually is getting the right outcome out of people and communicating with people and understanding what's driving them. And I think because of that, it's important. Because of that, I think the social aspect of it and the communication aspect is super important. I also think that you can't always win at everything. I know it sounds weird because I'm all about winning in delivery, but in doing so, you've got to give a few things up. You've got to figure out what is it that my stakeholder needs, or this person that I need something from needs, and how can I get some of that from them whilst also giving them something back, right? And that means you might have to relinquish some control or some form of feature or aspect that you really want to achieve. But that tends to be a better outcome, by and large, because it builds stronger relationships long term. So that's my take on it for now.
Yeah, no, that resonates.
Cool. Good question for you then about community, because I know that you're all about community, and that's probably the linchpin of social awareness and being an active person, building relationships. So what does that mean to you, and how is that important for delivering in the first place?
Yeah, it's a good one. As you say, I'm very passionate about unlocking the power of community. Now, I think that means different things to different people, like anything, right? If you ask 6 different people, what does community mean? You're going to get 6 different answers, and that's okay. But I do think in some spheres, community is kind of misunderstood. I think generally, to me, community is a hard thing to describe, right? But I think really what community is it's a way people can be made to feel in a kind of group environment where they have, things in common and they're like-minded in some way. So, in the work setting, I've worked in many, many environments, and in my current kind of environment, we have lots of communities of practice, right? Now that is a community, but they're very focused on a certain practice across whatever it might be. It could be particular technology, it could be particular practices. Now I've, set up and launched a lot of communities, lots of communities of practice for different things. And it's a coming together of people who have a shared goal and something that they all kind of agree on in principle. But the thing that I think is sometimes overlooked and missed is when communities really work. And I like the idea of nurturing communities. People use different terms. I'm somebody who likes to nurture things, right? Because a great community needs continual input and involvement. And the success of a community is based on the strength of its membership, right? But the real thing is it's the great communities, it's deeply about a sense of belonging. We feel a part of that, they feel like they belong, right? And I think sometimes that gets missed. And there's a really good book by Susie Wise. It's one I'd recommend, and it's called Designing for Belonging. And a lot of my passion for community is really about, because I'm somebody who likes to be inclusive, and great communities are welcoming, they're open, and they are inclusive, right? But if they're about particular practices or topics, naturally will only appeal to certain people, but anybody who wishes to be involved or get involved or has a good motivation to do so should be encouraged to do so. But there's quite a lot of things to think about when you're doing community, and sometimes people understand these things, and sometimes I think there's a journey to be gone on there around, welcome, how do you help people to contribute, participate. There's a lot in it.
No, great. Well, just before I crack on with that, I'm interested to know where you've been part of building communities, and it's actually either helped people's capability to increase, help people's careers even, or just help to get a project or program landed successfully. Have you been in instances where actually you've seen the power of a community in action and it's seen some real outcomes?
Yeah, in different ways, really. I think my sort of passion for community and designing and developing communities comes from and is focused on information sharing, like knowledge sharing, creating spaces where people can come and, I guess, tap into, the collective wisdom, right? So the best communities are like informal spaces. So I've done it within, my sort of current, sphere of influence in the financial services sector, because I'm working across large, communities of engineers. But again, that's a very large, complex, heterogeneous community of colleagues, right? So the subsets of communities. So helping sort of launch communities of practice there is really about helping people to get access to other subject matter experts. So you naturally see that happen. So that probably answers part of your question. But my bigger passion has actually been more broadly around just bringing people together to give people a shared space, right? To connect on a human level, right? So that's the real thing. Yeah, because I'm like a human first type kind of individual. That's my focus. That's what I want to see. I like to celebrate difference. I'm a real advocate of, diversity, inclusion, all these great things that I think have become, a game changer for organizations to be able to differentiate themselves in a very competitive space when people are looking for the best organizations to work for, right? But bringing it back to your question, so my meetup, for example, Future Work Scotland, that's a global community. But it kind of became that way really as a consequence of the global pandemic. So when I got involved in taking it over and was asked to lead it, we maybe had a membership of 800 or so. And then we pivoted to like a virtual model because we weren't doing in-person events where people physically went to a location and there's pizza and there's drinks and all the rest of it because, nobody was leaving their homes, right? We were in a lockdown period. So we started to run these things online. But what we did was my co-organiser and I, we pivoted to like a weekly cadence because what we realised was we were all stuck in our homes. We'd lost that ability to connect with one another, and we wanted to make sure that that wasn't lost at a time when people really needed to stay connected and being able to continue to have the relationships that probably prior to the pandemic they'd taken for granted, right? We did take a lot of things for granted. I think it's probably fair to say. It'd be good to get your thoughts on that in a second. And then we took it from there. So we did weekly events, but a lot of the people who came and spoke at my meetup were, global thought leaders who were also grounded at home, not doing the consultancy, not traveling because, there were no flights, etc. And they were giving up their time and they were happy to do so. So it kind of went from there. And that built a sense of community because people started to come regularly. People, recognized it as a great space. And my role in that as a kind of host and an organizer was simply to create the space and hold the space for others to come and make connections, get inspired and learn things and take those inspirations back into whatever they were doing. So we were simply opening up a body of new knowledge or an interesting idea or, I guess introducing somebody to, maybe a thought leader's new body of work or a book that they'd just written, all of this stuff, right? But time went on, a lot of the people who came along would consistently come along because it was a space where they felt something. And, there's a certain feel and, we as organisers, we created that feel, right? And every meetup, community or group of whatever description it might be has a certain feel, right? And that's what connects people, encourages them to want to come back and be part of that.
Yeah, that sounds good. I do concur with that. I definitely have not had the exposure of leading a group of 800 plus people, a group that's that large. So, but I think it's really commendable that you were able to get that mantle on and do something.
So all I was going to say was we that's the beauty of it, right? We created the platform, but there was no way we did not deliver 800 events. 800 events took place through, a positive consequence of the platform we created to give people an opportunity to get involved, get inspired. And then what they were doing was they were springboarding off the platform we'd created to then take that back in. And all we did was through our connections in, Africa and, America, Australasia, South America. That's how these things happen, right? And that's why I found myself at Agile Africa last year, keynoting in Ghana, because I built strong relationships with other, Agile influencers who were based out of the African continent. But we didn't, we weren't leading that. We were the catalyst.
Fabulous. Yeah, that's really good. And again, the thing where I was going with that was absolutely what you said about creating that right environment. It's crucial, right? Because in my view, my experience, you can tell people what to do, or you can show them what to do, or you can create a space for them to work it out with you. And then they typically get better ideas if they're told what to do. And so doing that and giving people the freedom to think, freedom to disagree, collaborate, and come up with some brilliant ideas, and then maybe take some actions to do something with it. That is quite freeing, and it's quite liberating, and gets people interested, and gives people the spark back around Agile, around whatever that topic and that subject is. So the fact that you've been able to do that is really, really good. I think that the way you've sort of gone about it is very applicable to even working in a smaller setting in a delivery team, not just in the terms of the context that you set it out as well. So there's a lot that we can take away from just if you're leading a project or a program. There's a lot you can do in terms of take it away and take those into your day-to-day team activity as well. So I've certainly experienced a bit of that, and yeah, that's really good food for thought. Thank you.
No, that's good. It's a good point you make. So what about they're good principles? In general. So I think you've hit on a good point there, right? They're great principles for building effective teams.
I think one of the things I thought about it was, well, when you were speaking, was about the authenticity, because the purpose of the group needs to be important, right, and clear, but then making sure that it's real, that we're actually here to solve a problem or to connect around things that we actually care about. That tends to get people's perspective and people motivated as well to be part of that community. So I'm also interested in your take on where we're heading in terms of how people organize different types of groups. So with experiences I've had, we talk a lot about communities of practice. We talk a lot about maybe guilds or chapters or other forms, and sometimes they are misrepresented or the terms are used interchangeably. I don't know if you've had a similar experience. What's your take on that in terms of what's the right setting to have those types of functions, or even what is your take on what it means to be a community of practice versus a guild or anything like that? Because I think there's a bit of a misconception in some forms where we probably could do with a bit more help to understand better and utilize those forms better.
No, that's a good point you're making. So I'm going to make this one really simple. I'm one of these people that doesn't massively care for labels and names. And there's a good reason for that, because I don't think that's what matters. All I tend to encourage in a lot of my work is that we're consistent, and then everybody's using the same terminology and everybody knows what it means, right? And I think that's more important. So it's like anything, I'm one of these. I'm kind of like framework agnostic. So although I'm doing a lot of work in various initiatives which require different tools and different models and different frameworks, I don't fixate or have any allegiance to any particular thing, and that's partly also because I'm doing my work through the BCS with the Agile group there, and that's really as the chair, that's what I kind of advocate for across that committee and that membership. But the labels and names don't matter. What matters is I think you touched on it. What are you really trying to accomplish? And who do you need to be able to do that effectively? So that's back to, autonomous groups of people, empowering them, trying to minimize the amount of, handoffs or having to, go and go to other groups that are outside of your core group, because that will introduce inevitable delays, natural delays. And, the sort of, a lot of this is about, and I often use the phrase setting yourself up for success. So I don't care whether people have guilds or chapters or whatnot. It's collections of people who are coming together. And as I said earlier, when I was trying to describe community to you, they've got a common purpose of some description and some goals and outcomes. And that's how the best teams achieve things, right? And I don't think those labels matter. What matters is, are we clear on the asks? So there, I know I've threw out a whole bunch of things there, but I'm going to let you digest that and see what you think.
Oh, I'm digesting indeed. It's very good. You're bringing back flashbacks of things to me that I've experienced in the past and I've tried to avoid and learn from as well. One of them is about taking people on a journey. So storytelling is super important, and we don't understand that enough or utilize it enough, and the power of it in delivering change, in delivering transformation programs, or even something on a smaller scale. But also storytelling and continuing to tell the story, because people come and go. Have they heard that story before? No, maybe not. Have people forgotten the story? Probably, usually yes. So continue to tell that story, because although the scope might change slightly, the features might change, the people might change, but the story should be consistent and repetitive. And that's what I find tends to help people to stay bought in and working together, amongst many other sort of attributes and tasks as well. But yeah, I think you hit on that. And one of the things, if I look back around, where have I perhaps not got the advocacy within a team as I would have done, is because I didn't tell the right story consistently enough to the right people all the time. So yeah, very good.
You reminded me of something that I think is probably worth just calling out quickly. So in one of the large-scale sort of community development initiatives I ran a few years ago, as I talked there about narrative. So there was a narrative I created which came off the back of a vision that I'd co-created, and the co-creation piece is important too. So there's other people who are part of that, and I could go away and create a vision on my own, on the back of an envelope or something, and then start sharing it. I wouldn't expect people to necessarily understand how I came up with that or buy into it, right? But the point you made that I really like, which is something I've done a fair amount of over the last 4 or 5 years, is taking the message, but not only taking the message and telling the story, but reinforcing the message and continue to build on it as things change, but also critically, getting others to come in and also be advocates and champions of that. You buy into it, then what happens, and this is back to your earlier questions about community, you take your messages into the communities, and I took those into various communities of practices for one particular initiative I've got in my mind. And where you succeed is because those communities help to amplify the message. That's how you get impact, right? And that's how you get impact. That's where, I think you asked earlier about how can you be successful in delivery through community. That's probably the best way I would summarize it. So yeah, I've come full circle, but hopefully that helps. I just didn't want to forget.
You've definitely answered the question for sure, with a really good lens on it. I was also thinking about all the things you're doing in terms of public speaking, coaching, mentoring. So you're giving a lot back. I'm sure you get something from that giving. While it took me quite a while to realize that career development, and whether it's in project program leadership or just leadership generally, isn't always about taking and learning. It's about giving too. And I've got ideas, I've got thoughts around how I've benefited from it. But given that you've got this whole breadth of giving of your time and resources, I'm really interested to know what are the interesting things that you've done in terms of coaching and speaking, the experiences you've had, and how have you benefited from it? How does that benefit the giver as well as the recipients?
Yes, no, that's brilliant. That's really, really good. So I think what happens to a lot of us is as we progress in our own respective journeys, and I'm quite a reflective individual, so I stop fairly regularly and take stock, and I like to have gratitude for what is gone well. And I've been very privileged in my journey, and I had a lot of great successes and travelled around and done a lot of really great things, and but I met a lot of really great people along the way who helped me and supported me and helped me become who I've gone on to become today. None of us succeed alone, right? There's no such thing. I often, I quote it's a famous quote. A lot of us know it, and I've used it in a number of my talks. If you want to go, fast, go alone. You want to go far, go together, right? And I remember even at the beginning of my career as a young software engineer, I come into a team and there were sort of 2 senior tech leads in that particular team who already had the length of experience that I have now. But what they did, which I will never forget, is they kind of took me under their wing, right? And they taught me a lot of good things, and they were good people, right? So I learned a lot from those individuals, and I think that set a lot of foundation for me. So, you were asking me earlier about all the things I'm involved in, because I'm motivated to help other people grow. So I've done lots of mentoring in various forms. I've mentored through the British Computer Society's mentoring network. I've done a lot of coaching. I've coached execs. But even in my day-to-day work, I mentor and coach a lot of colleagues round about me, because I love to see people succeed, and grow, because it's a natural human thing for me, right? To see other people achieve their goals. There's just something really quite thrilling about that. And as I say, the things I'm doing now, there were others who encouraged me, right? And now I'm very motivated I've always been an encourager, right? And I'm the oldest of my siblings. So for me, it's a natural thing that's probably been there for most of my life. But I think it's how we succeed in not just the workplace, but in life, helping each other grow, right? And there's a lot of people in my spheres who have a very similar mindset. I think especially around coaching, because in coaching and mentoring are very different, as you know. But with coaching, you're kind of simply helping a coachee to sort of feel their way towards some sort of outcome that they're kind of capable of anyway, but for some reason they don't feel that way. And I think that's why I'm a huge fan of coaching, whether it's, individual level or team level or whatever the case may be. And, back to the speaking and, my meetup and all I do through, the professional bodies I'm involved in, I have the privilege to create and maintain a platform that others can take advantage of. So I'm always looking to encourage other people to take the stage, and I've encouraged others to get involved and become speakers and get onto the Agile speaking circuit, which can be quite a challenging environment if you're new to it. I've been in it for many years now, but everybody needs somebody to encourage them, somebody to support them, somebody to champion them, somebody to sponsor them. We talk a lot about sponsorship. All these things are critical to ongoing, not just professional success, I would say our collective success as a society. That might sound like a grandiose thing to say, but yeah, what do you make of that?
I think that's great. I think it's selfless, but also what I've realised over the years is that there's benefits have different meanings, all right, to some, and it could be monetary, it could be financial, it could be social, right? But it could just be a nice feeling, right? A feeling of that you've created value on others. And so as I think as we all develop in our own careers, no matter where you are, there's usually somebody who you know a little bit more than, maybe a lot more than. But there's also usually somebody that has learnt, that knows more than you, that's pulled you up. And you talked about your two colleagues bringing you under the wing. I'm quite sure that what they did was a catalyst for you wanting to help others, because you got that sense of gratitude from them supporting you. And I bet that they got some gratitude, some satisfaction from supporting you themselves. And they didn't probably expect it or want for anything in return. So I think as we grow ourselves or learn, it's just natural course of action to bring people with you, because you're always going to be wanting support from other people, and therefore why not bring other people on you and with you? And that should be an ongoing journey for everybody to push and pull, get knowledge and give knowledge back. And so the value and benefit I see in that is that feeling of supporting other people is good for the greater community, so to speak. And that's enough of a sense of value for me in doing that, because it means then that hopefully other people's lives are improved for the better. So obviously I have a certain amount of value I can give, right? But whatever I can, I will, and I'll try. And there's also an element that obviously people are given into my life, therefore why not do the same too? So that's kind of what I make of it. And even the fact that the other thing around that is the fact that even if I get nothing back from it, as in nobody says that there isn't anything sort of tangible, giving for the sake for the giving anyway, it shows that your motives are right. The fact that you're not driven by certain other types of motives, and that for me I think is good. I don't know if I've answered that incredibly well, but I guess what I'm saying is if you go in without expecting to receive anything tangible, you actually get a better sense of reward from that in any case.
I agree. And I think that the way I often summarize a lot of this stuff is, and I'm probably speak for many friends of mine as well, is there's something around helping to unlock the potential in others.
So Sat, we talked about all the things that you're doing, all the interesting things you're doing. It'd be really good to just understand how on earth you find the time to do it all, because you've got so much on the go. You've got a day job, got a very busy life, home life too. What are your ideas, and we learn from that?
Yeah, good question. You won't be surprised to hear that I do get asked that kind of question fairly regularly, given the amount of stuff I'm involved in. So yeah, I'm not surprised you're putting me on the spot with that one. I think the first thing I would start by saying is we all have the same amount of time. All have 24 hours in a day, and it's up to each of us how we choose to use that time, right? And you know, I have a certain way of doing things. You'll have yours. Everybody's unique in that, right? So I think the thing that's important there is our habits, right? Habits are important, and I think that the habits are the key to unlocking how one can effectively use their time, right? So the thing for me, and I say this quite a lot, and I say this to my children, is having a certain attitude, right? Having the right attitude towards whatever you're doing, and I think our attitude informs everything. It informs our behaviours, and our behaviours inform, you know, habits and the discipline that underpins that, and that will be the determiner of how much we can really fit in, right? And that's how I work, you know, as an Agile practitioner. As we talked about, you know, many times, there's different things I do there, but naturally I like to visualize what I'm doing, right? And that's something we encourage in teams. I do that a lot in my coaching work. And again, I'm a big fan of Kanban practices, right? So visualizing your work important. You won't be surprised to hear I've got a number of Kanban boards, you know, for things I do for my meetup. You know, my organizing team and I, we have one such thing, and very simple workflow, bunch of flow state, clearly see where we are, you know, as things move through the various flow states. And again, in true, you know, Kanban fashion, we look to, you know, minimize the amount of things we have in progress at any given time. If you take on too much stuff and you keep, you know, bringing things in, but you're not finishing things, all you're doing is you're just starting more work, but you aren't getting things finished. So that tends to result in, you know, overload. You're not getting things done, and it can become quite overwhelming after a while. So I think that's quite important, I would say, to think about that. I have in my day-to-day work, I have a daily practice that I call Prep the Day. And it's a daily ritual. I do it every day. And it's quite simple. All I do is I'll come online, and before I do anything else, I go into my calendar, and I have a 30 minutes block for that every day. And I don't use 30 minutes, but that's the most time I would allocate. It's a time box, right? I would start. And what I do is I simply write down all the things that come to my mind that I think I need to be doing this on that day, right? But it's a sort of deliberate stream of consciousness. I don't spend too much time on it. I don't overthink it. All I do is I get everything out of my head. And the reason I do that, and I write it in a fairly structured manner across a number of core areas that are consistent every day when I do the prep the day ritual. But the reason I do it that way is because the things that pop into my mind are likely the things that are important, are coming into my mind, are likely going to be the things I know I need to be prioritizing. And if they don't come out then, and I haven't thought about them, the reality is probably not that important, right? And it works really well. And I've done this years and years and years, and I think it's good. But, you know, everyone can have something different, right? No two of us are the same. But, you know, I think starting your day with some kind of structured, considered approach to how you want to start your day is crucial, right? And the other thing that I remember a friend of mine saying is sometimes some people would think about it the night before. They go, what are the priorities for me? That capture that somehow. And when they start their day, however that looks, they know what they're going after. But you've got to prioritize. You've got to minimize the amount of, you know, work in progress. If you take on too much, you're kind of hampering yourself in terms of being able to get things done. So, you know, minimize it to the top. I like to have between 3 or 5 really top priorities that I absolutely know I want to get done that day. And if there's other things that fall outside of that, if I don't get them done, it's not a big deal, right? It's just, I guess it's having that kind of structured, deliberate, intentional approach.
How's that? No, it's good. And I've got to ask you, are you one of those people like I am who tries to get the hardest stuff done early, or do you try and get the quick wins out early? There's no right or wrong, but I'm just interested.
No, it's good. It's a good thing as well. So what I try to do, I'll often start with something easy and quick. And the reason I'll do that is because I'm setting the tone for the day. And you know what it's like. Once you accomplish one thing, you motivate yourself to build it. It's like that. You've probably seen it. You see it on YouTube, it's everywhere. You see it on LinkedIn. The sort of admiral talking, and he goes back to his old university, and he's doing a sort of lecture at a graduation ceremony, and he talks about where he got to, and how do you succeed in life? And he said you succeed by if all else fails, start your morning and make your bed. You'll find it easily on YouTube, right? And I think it's brilliant. I've tried to get my children to watch it, but I think he's absolutely spot on, right? You start with something simple, and I did that as a kid, right? So my siblings didn't. I won't name anyone, but I was one of those kids that would get up and make my bed in the morning, long before I saw this video, long before YouTube was even a concept. But I think it's a really valuable idea, right? And what he's saying is, you're doing something simple, right? You've accomplished something, you've ticked something off. Now build on that, keep going, right? And I think there's a lot to be said for that type of mentality. So yeah, start with something easy, a quick win. in, get something done, and then go from there.
No, I get it. That sounds like one to go for me, for sure, definitely. So, right, close to the end now. I'm going to give you a chance to ask me a tough question. Make it hard, make it interesting if you want. But all about anything really around what we've talked about, just to get my take on things. But to be fair, you have asked me along the way, which is actually quite good. So you're not done too badly, actually. But yeah, last chance.
I like a conversation. So for me, it's always a conversation.
Yeah,
it's got to be a two-way.
Yeah,
I think you would expect that from me. Oh, right. A question for you. So in my spheres and Agile, etc., we talk a lot about continuous learning and failing fast, which is a phrase I don't like. I prefer learning fast. Have you got like a notable, pivotal example of a time where you failed in some way, to use the term, and then, but it ended up being a really good thing for you, and then it springboarded you into ongoing success off the back of that, but the failure taught you something really, really important?
So that was the hardest question I've ever been asked, actually, on one of these podcasts. So I'm gonna cancel those questions next time. I cannot for the life of me think of a good example. Let me think. I'll come up with.
Give yourself a moment.
Gosh. Well, I'm gonna do a cop out, right, and say that this podcast is an example of where I gave myself so many excuses because I was in busy jobs, got children, all the rest of it, and I think it was a failure to not start it soon enough, because I'm learning so much, and I feel that from the feedback that I'm getting from people, that they're also picking up on things that they can actually practically apply, from people like yourselves coming on here. So I kind of wish that I did it sooner, right? And now that I've started it, I can see the value that it's given to me and hopefully to other people also. So sometimes there's a bit of a hindsight where I'm thinking, if I'd started it just a couple of years earlier, would I have given more value to more people sooner? Yeah, maybe, but at least it's there. At least we got going, right? And so I think the failure of not starting has enabled me to just reflect on that and just get going, even when I didn't feel ready. And I think one of those things I learned along that journey is, yes, I'm experienced in what I do, great, but everybody has a voice, right? And even people that don't have that much experience. And don't wait until you're super experienced to give your voice a mouthpiece. You can pick up a mic, you can speak, you can give yourself a voice at any moment. And it's surprising how much value you have, how much thought you have that other people can benefit from and be uplifted from, no matter where you're at. And so it's probably doesn't answer exactly the question that you asked, but that's my answer and I'm going to stick to it.
No, I love it. And I'll tell you why I love it, because what you've said there is something that I advocate for very, very actively. You asked me earlier about, my speaking engagements and all of the things I'm involved in. What a lot of us, acknowledge is also, we as, role models for others and folk that other people take inspiration from, have a role to play to encourage fresh voices into the conversation. And everyone has a voice, but, some sadly will never feel like they've got anything meaningful to say. And that simply isn't true. Everyone's got something meaningful to say, and everyone's experience and journey is unique. And therefore, by telling that story, there's going to be somebody out there who's going to benefit or be inspired by that. And that's happened to be a number of times in ways that I hadn't expected. And then once it starts to happen a few times, you start to realize that actually our experiences are hugely beneficial to one another.
Fantastic. And I'll end on that, because it goes right back into almost a full circle, because in many respects, a podcast like this or a newsletter is kind of a community, but more virtual community. And, we're kind of right back where we started, because there are different ways, I think, of building community and supporting each other. And your time has been well spent as far as I'm concerned. I've really valued it, and I'm sure everybody that listens and watches to this will too. So with that, I'm going to say goodbye and thanks, Sat. It's been a real pleasure having you on board. And if you want to catch me or any of our other fantastic guests in the next episode, you can do that. You can follow us on YouTube, follow us on Spotify and every other means, as well as check out the newsletter on changeleadersplaybook.com. Other than that, I'll see you again on the next episode. Bye for now.